It's a mistake, and it's just bringing up something he doesn't need.
Well, France gave us the Statue of Liberty, didn't it?
Is that the same thing?
But they gave us the Statue of Liberty. Was that legal? I don't know what the law is.
He seems to intend to use it for Air Force One. Do you have security concerns?
Well, they better sweep that plane from front to back.
There are lots of issues around that I think will attract very serious questions if and when it happens.
Congress, by the way, approved the gift to the Statue of Liberty. Anyway, Republicans have yet to reach, as you saw, a consensus on Donald Trump's plans to accept a $400 million jet as a gift from Qatar. But Democrats sure know what to call it: corruption. Earlier today, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer announced that he would place a hold on all political appointments at the Department of Justice until the Trump administration addresses key national security concerns. Joining us now, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer. So as we understand it, Mr. Leader, there are three political nominees on the calendar. What positions are these?
One of them is a very important position. It's head of national security in the Justice Department. They're in charge of vetting people. And there are many positions. There are three right on the calendar, but there are many more in the pipeline and many vacancies. And I am putting a hold on every political appointment to the Justice Department until these very serious issues of bribery, of emolument, and of national security are answered.
I don't mean to sound cheeky, but do you think the Trump administration will care? Won't they just appoint someone into an interim position?
Well, you know, the bottom line is this is so outrageous that even Republican senators have voiced some concerns about this, have voiced real concerns about this. When it comes to national security, when it comes to a foreign country donating a plane that's Air Force One, and Air Force One has to be the most sophisticated plane in the world, it's a very, very serious issue. And I would believe that if anyone in the Trump administration cares about national security, they'll tell Trump to drop it, to not take the gift.
Do you believe that Qatar would put a listening device in that plane? Do something else to that plane?
Like this, you know, Katie, on something like this, you can't trust anybody. We go over, Air Force One is the most secure place around. This would be absurd to allow a foreign country. They could place listening devices in everything. And if they gave the plane and we took it over, you'd have to dismantle it from start to foot. It might even cost more than the plane itself. You'd have to look into every little bolt and every little, did they have a listening device in there? Qatar has proven to be sometimes a very unreliable ally. Or they're not an ally, an unreliable country. No, I wouldn't trust them at all.
What do you think Qatar wants in exchange for this plane?
Well, that's one of the things we want to find out. The bottom line is one of the issues out there is FARA, the act that says that foreign agents have to register. Who are the Qatari agents? What have they been doing? What have they been asking? What kind of relationships do they have with the president or people with in the White House? So these are all a whole bunch of very, very serious questions. And it is appalling. It's naked corruption. But it's also one of the great national security issues that we've had. You remember the issues with the Russian embassy years ago. We can't make that mistake again.
There's also right now a big discussion in Congress about Donald Trump's budget, what he calls his big, beautiful bill. You know, Republicans are talking about cutting Medicaid. Do you think that if they do that, that gives Democrats something to work with? Right now, Democrats have arguably have had a hard time finding their voice on pushing back against Donald Trump.
Look, we are united, House and Senate, Democrats throughout the country, in letting the American people know, and the American people are feeling it, how horrible these cuts are. This is the largest cut in Medicaid in history. Here's what's going to happen. 14 million people will lose their health care because of Medicaid and ACA. And the health care premiums of many, many more will go up. Loads of hospitals will close in rural areas, in urban areas. You make such a slash to Medicaid, these hospitals can't go on. Lots of people will lose their jobs, but even worse, people will have less ability to live a healthy life, less ability to survive with the drastic cuts. So the American people are totally on our side. And then when you think about it, Katie, why is they doing this? To give tax breaks to billionaires? God bless the billionaires. They made a lot of money. They don't need a tax break, particularly when it's going to make it far more likely that the health care of tens of millions of Americans will decline dramatically. You remember what happened with the ACA? They tried to cut it. And the public sentiment is everything, as Abraham Lincoln said, and the public rose up, and the Republicans voted against it. The reason they're having such trouble, one of the reasons they're having such trouble passing this bill, is there are a good number of Republicans who know how devastating this would be in their districts, and they want to vote no.
What should the Democratic position on immigration be? There's reporting from Axios that says that Democrats got a private briefing which told them to ditch their comprehensive immigration reform messaging. It's not working for them. And that arguably part of the reason you guys lost was on the message of immigration, just losing control of it.
Look, we have to get control of our borders. There's no question about it. Democrats want to do that. We want to be fair and humane and do what's best for our economy. But there has to be some control at the borders. And Democrats completely agree with that, as you heard Senator Gallego, who knows this issue very well, coming from a border state, talk about. His views, in many ways, are the sentiment of most of the Democratic caucus.
I want to ask you about Jake Tapper's new book on Alex Thompson. It's called Original Sin. They talk about a conversation that you had with President Biden where you encouraged him to get out of the race. You say, if he stayed in the race and lost to Trump, you told him this, then 50 years of, quote, amazing, beautiful work goes out the window. But it's worse than that. You will go down in American history as one of the darkest figures. The book also reports that Biden put his hands on your shoulder and said, you have bigger, I'm going to say huevos, it's not what the book said, than anyone I've ever met. Do you think Biden deserves the blame for the loss in 2020, 2024?
Katie, we're looking forward. We have the largest Medicaid cut in history facing us. We are focused on the future and doing right for the American people, plain and simple.
Did he say that to you?
We're looking forward.
Leader Schumer, I'm out of time. The bell is bailing you out, my friend. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you very much.